Thanks for tuning into Stacker Chats. Stacks is smart contracts for Bitcoin. I'm Gina Abrams, and I'm joined by Muneeb Ali, Stacks founder, with your regular updates. So there's been some discussion lately on Bitcoin the tool as compared to Bitcoin the community. What are your thoughts on this, and how does it relate to ongoing work at both Stacks and Trust Machines?
I think there's a very interesting talk by the CEO of Bitrefill. I think we should link it in the comment sections. And he basically makes this case about there is Bitcoin the tool. Like if you think of any technology like BitTorrent or something else, people are just going to come download the software, use it for what they need to do, and kind of like go away, right? And for that, like you need to look at the actual usage of Bitcoin. Like how many people are using it, why are they using it, what utility is it providing to the people, and how is that, how are those stats kind of like growing over time? And then there is kind of like Bitcoin, the idea or the culture, or some people might even call it a religion, right? And these are the folks who have kind of like just dedicated their entire lives to Bitcoin. There's the people who show up at Bitcoin conferences or are on Bitcoin Twitter and so on. And I think it's important to realize that these are two kind of like separate things. Obviously, there's overlap between the two, but they're kind of like separate things. Whereas people who actively kind of like use Bitcoin may not even sometimes be a part of kind of like this culture, right? Like I could just be a user and I use Bitcoin and then forget about it. And we need to grow that audience for Bitcoin to really become a global currency, a global store of value. And if you want to move people to the Bitcoin standard, it has to reach everybody, right? It has to reach like billions of people. Right now, in the short term, we need to aim for like hundreds of millions of users. And I think this talk then goes into the actual usage of Bitcoin. What are the top wallets? What are the profiles or the type of users who are actually doing interesting things with Bitcoin? And it's a very, very interesting concept, because this is something that we as developers feel as well, that as a developer community, we are focused on like building new stuff with Bitcoin, right? Like increasing the utility of Bitcoin, increasing the number of applications that use Bitcoin or help grow the Bitcoin economy. And sometimes, the two camps like don't see eye to eye, right? And that is something that I think we should work a little bit more on, because in my view, both of these things need to be successful. I do think that this core group of people who represent Bitcoin, the idea, or who are obsessed with it and basically want to see the project grow, they are playing a role in the growth of Bitcoin, but so are the developers, right? And if anything, I think on a relative basis, there are less developers in the Bitcoin ecosystem compared to some other blockchains out there. And that's just data, right? And I think we need to kind of like admit that and help grow the Bitcoin builders movement as well, that can increase the utility of Bitcoin, the tool. And I think that is something that I am seeing that change, especially with the various Bitcoin layers that have started. And Stacks is effectively one of them, right? You can think of Lightning, Stacks, RSK, all are Bitcoin layers with different type of functionality, and developers are coming in and building using these Bitcoin layers.
Great, thank you. And a detailed report on Stacks mining was recently released, written by Maddie Stacks, a Stacks resident. What were some of the ecosystem takeaways from that report, and any actionable insights?
Yeah, I think it was a very interesting report. A bunch of the information wasn't a surprise, at least not to me, or anyone who has kind of like looked at the data, because mining is a public system, right? The data is already out there. People like the Daemon entity have done some analysis before as well. There were some new things that were pretty interesting to find. Like, for example, the finding that mining is actually more profitable than we thought, because there is this corner case where sometimes when there's a flash block is when there are rapid blocks on Bitcoin and there isn't a corresponding block on the Stacks layer, right? So the Coinbase rewards basically roll over, meaning that the next block is actually much more economically meaningful. And people weren't like thinking about it and weren't really accounting for it. And the difference is actually quite a lot. And right now the report doesn't even look at gas fees, because gas fees make some difference right now, but in the future, I think they would actually drive like a significant mining incentive for miners, because as the network grows, obviously you're kind of like, see more gas fees out there. So knowing that mining is even like much more profitable than we thought right now is a signal to people out there that hey, there are profit margins, and maybe more people can jump in and try to mine on the network, which will be good for kind of like the decentralization, further decentralization and health of the network. At Trust Machines, like we are actually actively building, working on a new miner implementation or optimizing the miner. The idea is that I think right now, I don't think a lot of people know this, but at least there's no public domain work of improving the miner since pre-mainnet launch. Right? So some miners might have written internal software and they might be running them, but at least as far as open source code is concerned, the version of miner that's available is basically pre-mainnet launch, and there are several optimizations you can make, both on the economic side, like make a more efficient miner that can be more profitable, but also on the transaction processing side, which is something I'm more interested in, because I think we are seeing that some miners actually, they don't pack as much transactions that they could. And I think it just might be that they don't have a right implementation available. So Trust Machine plans to just open source it, because we think that this is something that we can benefit from. Other people can contribute to the miner implementation. We can use it. Other folks can use it. And this is like in the business interest of our applications, right? Like if, let's say, Zest protocol or console, they require a lot of transactions on the network. If miners are packing more transactions, that's actually healthy for the network, and we have a vested interest in doing that. So we'll see how our miner implementation kind of like comes out and performs out there. But as far as the report is concerned, I think the biggest takeaway there is the mining decentralization discussion that we've been having at the forum. I think it kind of like just highlights that how many miners are there, what are the characteristics. And I think there is some convergence recently on the various proposals that were around. I was talking about dust mining, and I think Ryan and a couple other folks were mentioning other proposals. And I think we've kind of like combined them, the community has kind of like come together to get bits and pieces of the various proposals. And I do think a new SIP that kind of like addresses some of the current challenges on the mining side could be very helpful in increasing miner decentralization by a lot. Like, for example, with dust mining, I think my confidence level is pretty high that you could get like up to 100 unique miners on the network that way.
All right, great, thank you.